Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this morning's members broadcast. I'm Chloe Tetro. I am the health coach here with Ready Care. And this morning, we're going to be looking at goal setting and moving a little bit beyond SMART goals, explaining a little bit of what those are for people who are unfamiliar, and really having a look at how we can make goal setting work for us in the long term. So to begin with, let's just have a quick look at what goals are. So goals would be defined as relating to the change process. Goals take us from an existing state to desired state or outcome, and they can be anything from cognitive, behavioral, lifestyle things. So intentions that we have to move us from one state to another. With goals, a very popular model would be SMART goals. So that was developed by Peter Drucker. And the premise of SMART goals, which would be utilized a lot in the likes of a work setting, business setting, would be that a goal is specific. So it is very, very clearly defined. There's a lot of clarity around what the goal is. It's measurable. So there is quantitative factor with that one can really check how much of the goal has been done. It's attainable, which is, always a plus, and realistic and time bound. So time bound is the big one with this that we're going to expand on a little bit. A time bound within the context of SMART goal setting is having a deadline, a hard deadline. So again, really, really good methodology of setting goals within specific parameters. So things like work, like shorter term, like today I am going to XYZ. But looking at the previous chat we would have had about motivation and really aligning your longer term goals with things that are important to you, that you value, and that are really aligned with what is most important to you in your life. That's been found to be the greatest teller and outcome of prolonged and sustained motivation and drive towards something. Now, the thing with those is that they are fairly abstract. They're fairly abstract concept. If somebody has determined that they want to make lifestyle, dietary, and health changes based on the fact of wanting to regain autonomy over their lives. Now, that could be something that is absolutely crucially important to that person. But within the goal setting criteria of SMART goals, that becomes quite a difficult thing to, transpose that model onto, because it is a longer term process and it is quite evolving. It changes quite a bit. The terminology and the felt experience of that is fairly abstract. So with SMART goals, they're absolutely brilliant. But alongside that, so there's SMART goals, performance type goals, and what's known as mastery goals. Our mastery goals would differ somewhat from SMART goals or performance-based goals, is that the goal is intrinsically linked to improving, to learning. It's more about shifting from performing to growing, to have a degree of mastery over a particular task. And that has actually shown, it's actually been shown to outperform just performance-based tasks, because the individual will begin to self-identify. There's a lot more agility around it. SMART goals can sometimes be quite fixed mindset. This is the thing we do at that hour and blah, 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 which is brilliant in some aspects, but it doesn't allow for the same kind of dynamic interplay when problems or challenges might come up. And inevitably, they always do. With the best of intentions, and especially for longer term intentions one might have towards a larger shift, it's very normal for things to kind of become not as as humdrum as we'd hope they would be, but rather have that degree of change be integral in how we approach the issue. So with mastery-based goals, the key there is to, first of all, like we spoke about in the previous chat we did, is understand the intrinsic motivation in what we want to change and why we want to do it. So in other words, it's really identifying, why do we want to do this? Why do we want to do it now? And what personal value is it feeding? Because the more our personal value systems are fed, the greater our performance of a task is going to be. So once we have the intrinsic motivation, so let's say in the context of a lifestyle and dietary change, and going back to that example of the individual who wants to have full autonomy and wants to have a sense of pride and ownership in their health that they might feel is something that they've previously been lacking. And all of the environment of self-confidence, of growth that's going to bring with it. The key with mastery goals is having identified what the value is, having identified what the intrinsic motivation is. Now it's looking towards identifying the core skills towards those meaningful goals that would be important. So the core skills area would bring us into back down to earth, back down to the nitty gritty. Where is the gap? Where is the gap in your knowledge base? Where is the gap in your habits? So the habits part of it are vitally important to understanding how to move from an abstract goal to something more concrete. So habits would be settled irregular tendencies that would be hard to give up. And that can be thinking habits, emotional habits, behavioral habits. And the brain doesn't know any difference between a good and bad. It just looks to automate specific behavior for you that you've done over and over because it's just trying to conserve some energy. So there is a myth out there, which is a pervasive one, that a habit is a 21-day endeavor. Now, there's a lot of research to say actually that's a bit of a gross oversimplification, and actually a truer average would be around 66 days. So that's about a 2-month. Within 3 weeks, it becomes easier, but really the habit can take 66 as the average, but depending on what it is and how great the circuitry towards the previous habit is, it can take 100 days, 100 days or so. So the key is to identify the right habits that'll move you towards gaining the skill and competence to close the gap between where you are now and where you want to be. So habits have been shown to be the predominant factor in dramatically influencing the results and outcomes we have in our health, in our work, or interpersonal relationships, and our life at large. So really taking stock of the habits that make up our day is massive in terms of course correcting where needs be, and giving yourself the best chance at moving towards a goal that you can give yourself. You can really regain some degree of control towards the trajectory that you're moving on. So habits have there's quite a lot involved in how they're formed, but a very, very simplified version would be that there's a cue. So there's not a queue of people, but there's an external stimulus cue, and from that cue you put in a routine. So that might be every Monday. Monday is your cue at 5 o'clock when you finish work, or 6 o'clock, or whenever it might be. So that's your context cue. Every Monday at 6 o'clock, I will do X action. So that's your routine. So a good one that I can say, that people say over and over when I'm chatting to them, that they've identified a gap is around preparation. So preparation is massive for food-based interventions because we're creatures of need, and if we don't have it immediately when we're hungry, we tend to make decisions that aren't really helping us in the long term. So preparation will be the example that we'll use. So every Monday, 6 o'clock, I'm going to make a schedule of the foods that I want to eat for that week. And so you have your cue, you have your routine, and your reward. And your reward here is going to be, I don't have to think about that for the rest of the week. And it's moving me closer and closer to my goal. And I feel a sense of achievement, that the stress of trying to make decisions day by day when I'm hungry is gone. I know that I've done a very small task for the rest of the week that's moving me closer to where I want to be long term. And I'm creating a little bit of dopamine here because I feel a good sense of achievement in myself. So your habit is your cue, your routine, your reward. And that's how it is in the beginning stages of habit forming. You go through that several times, depending on the habit, over and over and over. And what happens in the brain is that when the cue begins after a while, so Monday, 6 o'clock hits, you automatically, the habit is formed and it triggers the reward system straight away because your brain is anticipating, oh, we're going to feel great about ourselves. This is great now. So it becomes kind of interwoven into how you approach that cue. Monday, 6 o'clock, your brain already feels good about doing the behavior. And when it's that shift around from routine to reward to routine is when a habit is really locked in. So with that, there's three main, rewards that can happen in the brain. There is your, in the form of neurochemicals. So you have your oxytocin, which is your connection chemical. So oxytocin would be kind of the hug chemical. So if you have a really nice social interaction, or you've had a lovely conversation with somebody, or you get a nice hug, your brain releases oxytocin, which makes us happy. The other one would be endorphins, which are just your feel goods. And endorphins and dopamine can come together. Actually, they can all come in together. And then you have your dopamine, which is your accomplishment and your pride in self, which would be tied to serotonin as well. So we love, or the brain loves getting a cocktail of those neurochemicals. So when you can set up your cue and routine to give yourself that specific reward, whether it be, let's say you don't particularly like exercising, but you know that you're a very social person, and actually that's what you don't like about exercising. You don't like going for big long walks by yourself because you're bored out of your tree and you just want to have a chat. Setting yourself up with a cue reward systems, cue routine reward that would feed, let's say, your oxytocin, will make sure that you're way more likely to want to repeat that behavior. So partnering up with a friend, somebody that you love to have a catch up with, and say, oh, look, we'll meet twice a week and go for a big long walk and chat about how the week's been for us, and things we've heard on podcasts, or whatever it might be. Something that suits the person that you are, which kind of brings me on to making sure that the habits that you set yourself up for make sense within your life. And what I mean by that is oftentimes there can be an idea of how things should be. I should be going to 4 spinning classes a week, but actually you hate it in there. You hate the whole idea of the gym, but you might really like dancing, and you might have a friend who goes dancing, and you guys can meet up, and that would make way more sense within your own life, within what suits you, rather than doing something that actually it's not really you at all. Also looking at the available time and energy that's there in your week. And a good thing to do with that is to sit down and just make a 24-hour clock of like your average day, and start to pie chart, let's say work, or let's say, bring the kids to school or whatever it might be, and just jot down how much of your time is definite and locked into something else, because oftentimes we can actually be surprised at the amount of time that we do have in a day. That's one of the things that, people say, and I say myself, mea culpa there, in terms of not being able to do something or not being willing to do something based on the fact that there's no time for something. And actually making a list or a schedule could be a 10-minute endeavor, or it could be a 20-minute endeavor, or going for a walk could be a half an hour, and finding gaps within your 24-hour day of where these things can actually happen that make sense for you, is usually quite an eye opener when you have it in pie chart visual mode. So big takeaways would be SMART goals are really good for a short term, something. Once you've identified your larger goal and you want to take action on the daily basis aspect of it, SMART goals are great for short term goal setting. Longer term goals like mastery goals are really good to push yourself into the growth mindset of wanting to adapt, learn, and grow with a specific skill that you want to adopt and become better at. It's also a lot better for a kind of agility. If things come in that are challenges or problems, that you'd be able to navigate those a little bit easier with the longer term goal of wanting to just improve at something. And lastly, your habits make up an awful lot of your day. So taking stock of those, excuse me, taking stock of those and making sure that they're habits that are working with your overall goals, not against them, will be your best way forward in goal achievement. So that is me for today. Also, I'm very sorry, it's exceedingly noisy here today. For those of you that might know me, I live next to a bell tower, and it's gone mad today. So apologies there. And thanks a million for watching. And if there's any questions, you can pop them into the old box. I'll just give a few minutes, or a few minute or so for that. No. Okay, perfect. Always a pleasure, guys, and have a lovely day ahead, and we'll chat to you soon. Bye.